I will be swatching my new Smith Watercolor Sticks. It's a new medium for me, not the watercolor itself, but these watercolor sticks. And the split primary set from Smith. And the White Nights pastels. And I will also show you my catalog system, how I catalog my watercolors. I will also compare these watercolor sticks to Neocolor 2 and Neocolor 1 and watercolor sticks from Staedtler. So we will start with the split primary set, and it's an entry point into Smith for many people, and it was for me as well. And the split primary has basically both cool tones and warm tones of yellow, red and blue. And because I had it for a while, I did already swatch them. This is French Ultramarine, Phthalo Blue, Green Shade, Pearl Scarlet, Quinacridone Rose, New Gamboge, and Hansa Yellow Light. But how I like to catalog actually my watercolors is that I have them all on same page from the same brand. Sometimes it's more than one page. I have Core, Rossa Gallery, for example, Schminke. And I do have some of my Smiths like that, but not the split primary. So that's what we're going to do today. And I actually created a chart like this where all the colors, they are in the middle, and then you can see what kind of mixes each color make. And of course, this is not a complete table of all possible mixes, because you can mix a bit more color, a bit more of the other color, or you can mix 3 colors and get something else. But at least I believe that this is a good starting point. So let's go to the most exciting part, to the swatching. I already prepared my page, and I do prefer for my paintings cotton paper, 100% cotton, but this is an exception. The swatches I really like to do on different cellulose paper. I really love how this paper behaves, and you will see, even if you're only recognize cotton paper, I dare you to try this one. Especially for swatching, I believe it shows granulation really good. So we start with a cool yellow with Hansa Yellow Light. Now I'll put my New Gamboge, the warm yellow, on the opposite side. And you can see, even though I had them for a bit, I still did not use that much. It's because they are very, very highly pigmented. And I like to start with a higher concentration on the left and then just drag it out to see how it will be when it's applied lighter. Might even lift a bit. Yeah, always the first attempt is a bit messy, but that's just how I like it, a bit messy. Now New Gamboge. It's a warm yellow and it's a really beautiful color. I personally love it. And I think this is due to the pigment PY110. I do have another brand with just PY110, and it's a beautiful transparent color. Now next, let's do the reds. The cool red is Quinacridone Rose and the warm one is the Pearl Scarlet. In this process of swatching, it's not only giving you the idea of what a color looks like so that you can refer back to it, but it's also, as a process itself, the swatching, it's very inspirational. You can see the color, you can see how it flows. Helps you understand the properties of that color better. Even just looking at the colors, you already get inspired to create something. It's a beautiful Quinacridone Rose, I must say. And you can see watercolors flow beautifully on this paper. It will not take many layers, but for our purposes, for just swatching, I think it's perfect. And I have some left here for the watercolor sticks, just so I can have yellows in one line, reds in one line, and blues in one line. Next is French Ultramarine, the warm blue, and the Phthalo Blue, green shade, the cool blue. My hands are already getting dirty, because everybody who's dealt with paints and watercolors recognize that feeling when you start getting your hands dirty. That's when you are actually enjoying it. So ultramarine. You can already see the granulation. For granulating watercolors, I really like to add a pop of water to actually see the granulation better. I have a watercolor stick with ultramarine blue, and here is the phthalo, also very beautiful and very pigmented. So this is the split primary set. You can see the granulation is already showing up. Now, what about the watercolor sticks? And there's multiple uses of it, and that's what I like about them. And let's see what we can do. Well, the easiest way is to just have some water, like this. Then we take the watercolor stick. I will start with Hansa Yellow Dip, and you just start making circles, and you can see it is already activating. I must say, like this, it takes some time to make it as pigmented as we would have with watercolor from the tube. Also, when the stick itself is wet, you can make marks like this. Take the brush and you can do all kinds of cool effects. Be mindful that the line most likely will stay because you are damaging the paper when you are applying the stick with pressure. And the third way is, of course, just to wet the stick and pick it right from the stick. Again, you can see it is very pigmented. And yeah, you can make lines like this. It is great for doing paintings of landscapes, and that's why I actually like them so much, because I am a lot into landscapes, the abstract landscapes. And now let's watch the sticks that I have. So I like to have my colors all next to each other like this from the same brand, but I also have a separate swatch card for every color where I can have it on a larger area. It's especially useful for granulating watercolors, but also it's good to have them all separate when you are referring to them to make a painting. You can just put a swatch right next to your painting and already see how the colors will interact with each other. This is permanent alizarin crimson, and for this let's just do the technique where we just pick up the color right from the stick. Of course, to have a perfect swatch, I need to have my paper a bit slanted under an angle. So this technique of just picking up the color works really well as well. And let me show you how it will be in. So it works best when the stick is actually a little wet. Now let's do the ultramarine blue, and here we have a chance to see it next to French ultramarine and compare their granulation levels. You have a larger brush, of course it's not as convenient to pick the color up, but I can do, for example, the reverse thing, like dabbing my color stick, pigment stick onto a brush. It's a bit too much water, but it will do the job. And even drop the pigment like this and then spread it out with a brush. And then to see the granulation, if there is any. Definitely not enough water. Guess after the previous attempt when I had too much, now I got scared and had too little. The same thing happens to you. Let's share in the comments. Let's cry on each other's shoulder in the comments. And I like this a bit uneven application. I do not try to have a perfect swatch. Sometimes on YouTube, often on YouTube I see them being perfect and I start feeling self-conscious. But that's also how I paint. Unevenly, abstract, very messy, so to say. and I like that look, and that's what I'm going for, so I think that's how my swatches should be as well. So I can get inspired and get an idea of how things can look in a finished painting for me. Now here I have a swatch card with some of the Daniel Smith colors that I have, that I swatched before, and I had 2 spots here. Let's do the Lunar Black first. And it rewets really easily. What I'm thinking is just to cut a portion of the stick in the future and put it in a half pan. But let's see, I'm not sure how will they cut, if they will crumble or not. So that's my biggest concern. If you tried cutting the Daniel Smith stick, please, I will be really thankful if you would let me know if it crumbles or not. Because yeah, I don't want to lose a lot of watercolor. And Lunar Black is known for its granulation, of course, the heavy granulation. And for example, Lunar Blue, basically, it's PB15 phthalo blue with PBK11 with Lunar Black. So with this color, you basically can take, for example, phthalo green or some other highly staining single pigmented colors and make a beautiful granulating color out of it. And here I've already made the bigger swatch of Lunar Black, and you can see the granulation. You might have seen effects like this in artists' work, and this is 9 times out of 10 this is made with Lunar Black from Daniel Smith. Now let's do the Sodalite Genuine. It's one of the pre-metallics made of precious stones, allegedly. And see, even when it's wet, you can already see the beautiful granulation. Now the last 4 colors. Let's start with the sap green, and you can see how it rewets almost instantly, even though it's a solid stick. That is a real beauty. And I think it is due to the combination of PG7 and PY150. PY150 always gives a real shine, a real feeling of light. Don't even know how to properly describe it, but the color is beautiful. Now next to it, phthalo green. And yeah, you can easily mix any natural looking. Oopsie, this is not a phthalo. Let's try to lift. This one doesn't lift so easy, but let's see how much we can. Well, to an extent you can, but this mistake will not stop me. Yeah, you can easily mix your own green out of any yellow and blue. It will be much more natural looking than the phthalo for sure. And even sap green is not that hard to mix, even though it is mixed with from phthalo. But this is a stick form, so it means you can draw with it too, because there is already PG7. This will be fine. So I did want PG7 for mixing and sap green for basically drawing with it, making marks that you cannot just make with a brush. And again, phthalo I have already swatched. Quinacridone burnt orange, and this was the original reason why I bought even a stick. I couldn't find it in the tube, so I decided to go with the stick, and yeah, then I just really liked the watercolor sticks, so I am sticking with them. And Daniel Smith has several beautiful colors that are basically a mix of quinacridone burnt orange and different yellows mostly. So that's why I bought it as a mixer. But even on itself, I do really like this color. Definitely recommendation. Again, I already swatched it. Here it is. You can see how it will be in mass tone and mid-tone and very light. So that actually tells me that I want to lift a bit to see how it will lift. And the last one, burnt yellow ochre. I have a bit of a trouble with it, which I will share once we swatch it. I was thinking that this is not a perfect wash and I should have made it better, but then I realized, well, actually, this is how I like it. I know how to make a perfect wash. I know the conditions for it, know what I should do, but this is not how I paint. This is not how I want it. So why would I? You know what I mean? So I'll just keep doing it how I like it, and I do think that it shows the color itself pretty well. So for the purposes of the video, I think that's perfect. So what's my problem with this burnt yellow ochre? Great color, nothing against it, but if we take some other sticks, look, I did not use it much, not more than this one, but you can see that the diameter is much smaller and the stick itself is shorter. And this is not just like if we compare some other sticks, it's also, for example, this one. Yeah, so they are not all uniform by the looks of it. And it's quite the difference, I would say, this one. Don't know what happened, but it is what it is. I ordered it online, so probably in person, if I was selecting it in person, I would probably notice it. So these are the dried Daniel Smith swatches for today. I say beautiful colors, and here they are all on one sheet. The Sodalite and the Lunar Black show really beautiful granulation. Okay, so before we proceed to the White Nights, let me show you how you can use these watercolor sticks also in mixed media. So here I made a swatch of acrylic paint in 2 layers. This one is 1 layer and diluted acrylic, and this one is black gesso. And on acrylics, things like pencils and crayons don't go very well. On diluted acrylic on paper, they will go much better, and on gesso, it's the best. And here we have a black gesso, but basically you can make any colored gesso from just white gesso by adding a bit of other color to it. But gesso makes a very absorbent ground for watercolors and for any other media. So I will take these 3 colors, Hansa Yellow, Sap Green, and Permanent Alizarin Crimson, just for comparison, and I will also be testing them dry. So first thing you have to know is that they do not behave like other crayons, for example Neocolors, and I will compare it with them, I will show you. But they are much drier, so they are not to be used much like you would use Neocolor. For example, they do feel much drier. And if we compare it, this is Neocolor 1. They are the same as Neocolor 2, just not water soluble. It goes like butter on every type of surface. So here you can see it's a bit dry, and this one is much smoother. So with this, with the Daniel Smith, you would have to press really hard, much harder than with Neocolor. Depending on where you are, I'm in Europe, but Daniel Smith costs me around 13 euro, and this costs me 3.5 euro. So obviously for mixed media, I would probably be sticking to my Carandash Neocolors, and they are light fast, so there's literally no reason to use the Daniel Smith. Just let me show you a couple of other colors. This is green, and this is yellow. So far they can draw on any kind of surface, although you can see on these 2 layers of acrylic it's the worst. It's very crumbly and patchy, so I see like 0 reason whatsoever to use it on top of acrylics. And this is, for example, Neocolor 2. On all kinds of surfaces it's good, even on 2 layers of acrylics, but of course the best is on gesso. And another Neocolor 2. It's definitely a winner for the mixed media. But let me also compare it to Staedtler. It's a German brand. They also make watercolor sticks. and I really like them, but unfortunately they are not light fast at all. Much more affordable than Daniel Smith, but yeah, if you want to preserve your artwork or hang it on the wall or sell it, they will not be an option. However, for sketchbooks, they are perfect. And you can see they go on this kind of surfaces even better than Daniel Smith, even though they do not go as soft as Caran d'Ache, I must say. So they do feel drier. But what distinguishes them from Neocolor 2s from Caran d'Ache is that whenever I dissolve them with water, I do see that some sort of white pigment or white base is used with them. It's not just colored pigment, it's also white. And because of that, they don't mix together so well. But the Staedtler, I can definitely feel that it's much more pigment than the filler. Let's just do a quick comparison. You can see it does look much more transparent. It's looking very transparent. It basically looks like just your traditional transparent watercolor. Now let's try Neocolor 2 Ultramarine. Well, actually, I mean, I've been talking badly about them, but at least this one has less filler. At least that's how it looks for me. But as a general rule, I do see that they are not as transparent as, for example, Staedtler. And to just have a comparison on the same page, all of them together, obviously this is much closer to phthalo blue, and these two are ultramarine. So this is the Daniel Smith. Another surface that I did want to show you is a very popular sketchbook from Sakura, and it's a black one, and I applied white gesso. Let's see, this is phthalo. It does go on it, but again, it is patchy, it's a bit rough, it's not the smoothest, softest application. You can try watering it because with gesso it's fine. It's not acrylic, and you can have an effect like this. But with Neocolors, they go much smoother. They are wax-based, so I guess that's the wax that's giving them that kind of application. So this was on gesso. Let's see what kind of colors this set will give us. And again, I bought this set piece by piece and this color separately, so I will swatch it as well. All of them except for this one have PW6, titanium white. And of course you can easily mix them yourself if you just have a tube of white. But what actually prompted me to buy them is that I had for some time this set for kids, and you can see I've used it up a lot, and they're basically very similar colors, only it's children's colors. So I thought if I like this set so much, I really want to have something like this. And white nights are very affordable, of course, incomparable to Daniel Smith. So I do have quite a big collection of white nights. And these colors are more just to play, so to say. They are not absolutely necessary, of course. Like I said, they can be easily mixed. So they are more for me to have fun with them. So let's do just that. Let's have fun. Did a mistake again, and now I'm trying to lift up the color, and of course I damaged the paper a little bit. But that will not stop me. Lavender in general is a very popular color, even for mixing. And the most popular is the royal blue, of course. Even for people who prefer not to paint with such opaque watercolors, the royal blue still is widely used in landscapes, in anywhere. You can see I also used it quite a bit, practiced with it. I will pick it up right from the tube, although I must say it does re-wet really well. And you can see why it's such a loved color, royal blue and lavender. Now let's do my big swatch cards as well. And a new red for me, Ruby PR170. Pigmented I didn't have before in my collection, and I already tried it, of course. I cannot control myself when I just get them. I cannot just put them away and wait till I swatch them properly. I have to just, you know, try it at least on a scrap paper, on some in a sketchbook or something. I really cannot wait to see the color, and this color, I must say, is gorgeous, gorgeous red, and it's light fast. I will be testing it for light fastness myself, but yeah, if this is truly light fast, this is such a great color. Here is how I try the colors right away. Cannot help myself. Since this Ruby, I tried mixing it, of course, with Hansa Yellow from Daniel Smith, with Ultramarine, and here's my sticks. So yeah, this is how I test them quickly. Yeah, gorgeous, all around gorgeous colors, I must say. So now that my pastels palette dried, we can see how they dry. Don't think there is that much of a drying shift, at least I do not see it. And here they are with bigger swatches. This one is not fully dry yet, but here it's already dry. So you can see if there is a color shift or not. And the last ones, of course. So what I like to do when I get a new material and I want to test it out, of course, like I showed you, I quickly swatch them in my sketchbook, or just, for example, with watercolor sticks, I already tried just doing the lines for how it will look like in landscapes. But a couple months ago I started reading much more, and I found myself in need for bookmarks, and this is how I actually can keep all my colors with me when I'm reading. I really like to look at swatches. That's why I have so many of them. This is my granulating color swatches. Let me know if you want a tour. But this way the color can be always with me. So especially because my paints are still wet, and some of it I have a lot of leftover from swatching. I can just draw some lines, abstract shapes, and that way I have my swatches always with me. So can't recommend this enough, and I hope you will enjoy watching me do it. So yeah, these are my bookmarks / swatch cards, and I hope you enjoyed this little painting session, and see you in the next video.